Good morning, it's Corrine. So I woke up this morning in, just one of these moods where, oh, by the way, I'm so sorry I say so much. I've noticed that when I watch these videos again, but I guess it's just my normal filler words. So anyway, so I woke up this morning and just not really feeling good, and not physically feeling good, but emotionally not feeling good. And this is, I think, just normal INFJ stuff where you can wake up and not feel good and have no idea why. And the normal situation of not feeling good but not knowing what it is, which I think is just the FE, doing its thing. And this morning, a lot of times in the morning, I like to look at INFJ and Empath stuff online. And I wanted to share something that I found this morning, which I guess was exactly what I was thinking this morning. And it was, sometimes I look at the INFJ motivational posters, and this was amongst them in the images that I found. It's not exactly a motivational poster, but this was posted by facebook.com/INFJ refuge, and it says, it looks like it has a picture of a frazzled looking person, and it says, INFJ, all I want is a log cabin in the middle of nowhere with books and Wi-Fi. Sometimes I reason my life is a hideous illusion, and I dream of disappearing into the wilderness, leaving behind my past, my present, and all plans for my future. The hustle and bustle for a materialism I care little for, propaganda, politics, phonies, and all the patterns I've encountered from their words unspoken that alert and alienate me to believe that this surely wasn't meant to be my playground. Well, I can completely relate to that. I mean, you can see where I live. This is pretty much my escape into the woods. Very normally I wish I lived in some sort of NF utopia where I didn't have to deal with the real world and all its greed and materialism, and where I could just, philosophize and be an NF and care about other people. And I guess, I have to think about my discontent, Where is my discontent coming from? I think a lot of it comes from just the fact that we are the 14%, and as NFs, first of all, and the 1% of INFJs. And I do think this is very much an INFJ thing, especially when you think about the extroverted feeling. We're just so not in touch with our own feelings. And one thing that has helped me recently was discovering something called inner child healing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before. I guess it's a psychological term that has been used for a few decades now. And if you've ever heard of John Bradshaw, he is a speaker that talks a lot about inner child healing. He's been around apparently since the 80s, because I was watching some of the videos, and you have all these people with like 80s style haircuts and stuff, and which kind of surprised me that something that I think is very forward thinking has been around that long. And I've also read posts by Robert Burney. I guess he's written some books on it as well. But I've noticed that if you can get in touch with your inner child, I know this might be hard to figure out what this is, but my theory is that within INFJs, we're dealing with this extroverted feeling, which means we feel everybody but ourselves, like we feel everybody else's emotions, and we feel this sense of discontent. But we don't know why, we don't know what it is, we don't even really know how to make it better. We just know that we're not happy in some sort of way. And at one point, I knew I had an inner child there. I knew that what it was, which was really experiencing that anxiety, was my inner child. That there's like an adult self and there's an inner child. And anyway, bear with me on this because I know this gets a little woo-woo a bit, but and that's the thing about INFJs is sometimes I don't know how far down the rabbit hole to go with this stuff. I mean, we go deeper than any other personality type, and sometimes when I would email one of my INFJ friends, I would label the email crazy talk because it just sounds so crazy to like SJs or some people who are really live concretely in the real world. And by the way, if one song that really makes me think of an INFJ song is the song Cheshire Kitten by S.J. Tucker, and it's on my song playlist. So if you have a moment, if you want to listen to that song, I think that song, it has the lyrics on it too, and I think that song describes exactly what it's like to be an INFJ. Anyway, so going down the rabbit hole. So I feel like because we're so out of touch with that inner child, that just if you can just think who it is, who within your body, like within your soul it is that's really, really hurting. And because we have these crazy imaginations, I don't even know how to describe it. As an INFJ, I can't describe things very well, I suppose. I just know it. So I at one point would imagine a child in the distance about 5 years old. And there are also inner child meditations that you can do. Like if you look up the Honest Guys on YouTube, they have an inner child meditation, which is really worth doing. But and you can sense that inner child is like upset and not happy. And if you just sort of imagine that you're talking to the inner child and soothing it and making it feel good, which is what we do all the time as INFJs to other people, you'll notice that within your own body, you will start feeling more calm. It is the strangest feeling in the world, I have to tell you. But it works. It really, really works. So sometimes when I'm feeling discontent, what I do is I just, call upon that inner child and imagine that inner child and imagine just calming and being sweet to that inner child. And then I have this strange feeling of, just safety and happiness, and it works out okay. I don't know what it is about the INFJ mind. I really do think this is specific to INFJ. And maybe INFP, it'd be interesting to hear from the INFPs. I feel like the INFPs are more in control of their feelings, so they don't need to do this. I mean, how I feel it is that I sort of anthropomorphize this various parts of my mind. Like, for example, it's very known what the critical parent is within the mind. So like when you get up and you look in the mirror in the morning and you say, oh my gosh, I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, I'm stupid, whatever. We're all aware of that. I think every personality type knows that exists. And I think in psychology they call that the critical parent or the critic, something in your mind. And when I was first going through my therapy after I had like severe depression, I was really in touch with that critic. And I used to imagine that critic, like I would anthropomorphize everything. I would imagine that critic as Gollum from Lord of the Rings. And the funny thing is, I am not a Lord of the Rings fan. I really couldn't even describe to you all the movies. But for some reason, that character just stuck in my mind as the critic within my mind. So whenever that part would come up, that self-abusing part of myself would come up in my mind, which really does keep us in anxiety and depression, I would, recognize what it was and just let it go. And the other thing is, the fact is we all know the critic, but the fact what we don't know is we have just the opposite in our mind. We have that part of our mind that loves us and sees all our good qualities. And And when I was in deep depression, and I thought I was a little crazy about this one because we're so in touch with the bad parts of our mind, but we're not in touch with the good parts. And when I was in some of the worst parts of my depression, I remember at one point just suddenly having this sentence come to me, and I don't necessarily hear voices. It's it's not like a schizophrenic thing, but it's just like it's the intuition. It's something coming into my mind, and the sentence that came into my mind is, "You can wallow in your happiness as easily as you can wallow in your misery." And I was like, "What?" I can. And from there on, I got very close to this positive part of myself. Now, what is this? Is it part of our mind? Is it something else? I don't know. But, since then, since I really got, and that was when in my late 20s, I've gotten pretty much in touch with a lot of these different characters, these different parts of myself. I think of them as sort of this soothing mother figures and, just other, it's funny within, you look at these INFJ motivational posters and one talks about imaginary friends, nobody's alone when you have all these friends in your mind. And it's kind of like that. And, at the risk of sounding crazy, it keeps me sane, having, we know who the critic is, right? But there's also the positive parts of us, and I do have INFJ friends who are willing to see these things as like spirit guides and stuff like that. And that's great, I think I grew up in an SJ household, so it seems scary for me to think of it as anything other than something within my mind. But the thing is, our minds don't necessarily know what's real and what's not. So if we have within our imagination or within our mind, if we have soothing thoughts, if we imagine somebody being there for us and soothing us, our body will relax, our stress will go down. So it's worth it. And don't worry that it's not a real person, because you know what? Nobody is going to take care of us like we can take care of ourselves. The thing about INFJ is we take care of everybody else, and we do it very well. And we wish we had somebody to take care of us on the same level that we take care of other people. But there just isn't anybody who's going to do that. And it's actually, I think, healthy to come to that conclusion, because we get so frustrated wanting other people to take care of us. And then when they don't, we get disappointed. And I think that's part of the craziness we experience. So if we can get our own self-soothing from inside of us, if we can soothe that inner child, and probably some point when you were younger, if you're an INFJ, there's probably some point where you realized the world was kind of a dangerous place. I think it could also be how you were raised, but and I think that's where a lot of the anxiety and depression comes in, is like, oh, I don't fit in here very well. I need to be on alert. And it's also the sensitivity and being an empath and feeling all those other crazy emotions and feeling like you're in chaos. So at some point you were probably a small child and feeling that way and having a panic attack or something like that. And now is the time, and that small child is still within you somewhere. And now is the time to soothe that child. And when you do that, you actually feel better. And more content. Now, I have heard that if you experienced really traumatic abuse as a child, you might not want to do that without a therapist present, because it could be just bringing up really traumatic things. I know with me, I was with my INFJ friend, and I started talking about one of my earliest memories of when my family, there was a hurricane in 1972 in southern New York called Hurricane Agnes, and it killed a lot of people, and our family had to evacuate very quickly. And I remember as a 3-year-old going down to the river and looking at the river with my mother, and my mother grabbing my hand, and the moment she grabbed my hand and her eyes were huge, like big and scary. I'd never seen my mother so scared, and running back to the house and realizing I could only take so many stuffed animals, to the shelter, and driving up to a shelter and sleeping in a barn. And that was one of my earliest memories. And when I was talking to my friend about that, it was as if I was right there. I was starting to hyperventilate. It was just crazy. And so the thing is, we store within ourselves some of these inner child experiences, and we need to recognize them and understand that inner child is hurting and sometimes is not feeling safe, and how we can protect and take care of that inner child, and how much that will soothe and help us in our everyday life. So I'm going to leave it there. That one got a little longer than I thought, but hopefully I can post it okay. Have a wonderful day. Love you. Bye.